Hey everybody, I'm Matt, Director of Client Success here at White House Custom Color. Before we get started chatting with Bruce today, just a couple reminders for you. If you have not subscribed to our Whcc YouTube, make sure and do that so you get notified of cool events like we have going on today. Follow along on Instagram at Whcc Pro, and for all your product related questions, learning more about our software tools, including our wall designer, which is incredible, the album designer, and our press card designers, check out Whcc.com. And if you do have questions during the broadcast today, make sure and put them into the chat and we'll make sure and get those answered for you as well. So thank you, sir, for traveling to hang out with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
It's been a great day. So I'm not going to try to introduce you, Bruce. I will let you do that on your own.
Okay.
So if you wouldn't mind telling everybody that's watching today who you are, a little bit of background about you, I think that would be great.
Yeah. My name is Bruce Starrenburg. I work for Hahnemühle, USA, and I've been working with them for about a year now, but I've known them for over 20 years. And I know them as I was a customer of theirs many years ago. And I started out with them locally as a print studio, and so I've been faithfully using their products for over 20 years,
Yep.
And that's how I ended up working with them. So I've been with them for a year, and I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we've been talking a lot today. I think you and I have had a good connection point where we're both talkers, and I've learned a lot about you. And in that description that you just gave, you left out 98% of everything that you've talked about yourself today. So
Yes.
you were not only a person who used a product, you literally offered every single paper that
That's
Hahnemühle
correct.
made. And you printed on all of that. So you were more of an evangelist of the company than just somebody who just used the product.
That's correct. I started very early on in the inkjet process. In the late 90s, bought one of the first Epson machines, or the early generations of Epson machines, and Hahnemühle was close to me, close by, location-wise, and I just started using their materials and faithfully used their materials for over 20 years. So they hired me because of my technical expertise, not only in the printing process, but the paper as well. I just know their papers, and I made it a goal to carry all their papers, every single one of them. And so I had been exclusively using their materials for that length of time.
Super cool. And that ultimately really led to you working for the company, was because of that relationship, and then you talking to the current CEO, and then it all worked together, and now we're here.
Exactly.
Which is kind of in tandem to why I'm here at White House as well. And that's kind of how we got, discussing on our first call that we did. And complete sidebar here, we were comparing account numbers, and Bruce actually beat me by about a year. But your account opened in June of '03, and mine was in August of '04. So we've both been faithful White House Custom Color clients.
Yep.
Long before I was working here, and long before you were with Hahnemühle, for decades, literally.
Yeah.
So that's cool, that our paths have had different roads, but kind of the same track, to ultimately bring us to where we're at in our career. So that's pretty cool. So one thing you shared on the call that I want to bring up, because it kind of came full circle for you today, you said back in the early 2000s, you called Mike. And what was the basis of that? I want you to share that, because that's a pretty cool story.
Well, I did, and it related to a photo lab that I owned and operated, and this was during the era where I call it the rug was being pulled out from under us, business-wise. The labs were, becoming a thing of the past, and I struggled with trying to reinvent the business when the digital age, took full throttle.
Yep.
And so I had seen White House Custom Color's website, and I actually was a customer of theirs. And so one day in my frustration, I called Mike, and I said, how did you do it? Because I was really, really struggling with how to reinvent this business. And so I had witnessed, as a customer of White House Custom Color, that they had done it so well. So I pick up the phone and I call Mike and I said, how did you do it? And he had mentioned that he has people in his family that are very adept and good at coding and setting up websites, and that was just, you know, kind of a wild call that I made in my quest to try to emulate something that was really, in my mind, perfect. So, and years go by, and lo and behold, I get to shake his hand and finally meet him. So that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So that's been probably 23 years ago, 23 years ago.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. Mike is an amazing person. Anybody who's met him, I've tried to walk through a trade show with him before. And if you ever want a trade show to take forever, try to walk through it with Mike Handline. You take 2 steps, then you stop and talk, and then you take 2 more steps. He's famous in the community, honestly.
Yeah, it was a thrill, absolutely a thrill to meet him in person. So
for sure.
Great.
So when we were talking on the call, planning for the content for today, now let me take a step back. When I learned that you were coming, I was very excited to learn from you and to learn more about your product, your papers, how White House interacts with those products for our clients, so that in turn we can take that knowledge that you have such a depth in and then pass that along. So what we're going to try to do for everybody today is I'm going to ask questions that hopefully relate back to how you can take that information into your sales space, you as in the watcher, and be able to use that to help in selling the product. You know, because ultimately that's where we're going with all this. The industry has amazing products in, and the availability of that is plentiful, but you have to be able to have the words. You have to be confident in what you're selling. So we're going to try to help you with some of that stuff today. So my first question for you, what is the biggest mistake people make when they're trying to choose a fine art paper for their work, in your opinion?
Well, I think it's that they probably don't give enough chance to the idea that the paper that they print on is so critical to their process. You know, people take a lot of time to carefully choose their equipment, set up their lighting. You know, everything is very carefully followed. And I think that a lot of people don't think to the very print, and that is the ultimate result of their efforts.
Right.
So I think that, you know, people really should take very seriously what a good print is and why it should be.
Right.
So I think that if people give that some thought, and then the various choices that there are, or the plethora of choices.
Ooh, that's a good word.
that really helps. That I think that helps give people direction on how to put closure on something that they put a lot of effort into creating.
So really what you're saying is that ultimately it's up to the photographer to choose. But instead of just rushing into it or just saying, I've just always done this, take some time and do some testing and make sure that the paper fits for your style, your lighting, your color, black and white, indoors, outdoors, studio, whatever that may be, and make sure that it fits. It's that important.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. So when we were having lunch today and we were talking about the, you know, like the base white of the papers, some are warmer, some are cooler, and you said the word, the papers have a palette to them. And a palette is very deep in that the color is part of it, but also the texture, the reflectiveness, the eggshell finish, all the words you've been using today. If you were going to say, because that book that you have next to you has so many different options in it,
mm-hmm.
For a person that's just starting out and they're like, I don't even know where to begin, and that's overwhelming to them, where should a person start? What's your advice?
Well, the first question that I always ask is, you know, we're talking about people's general taste to get the direction, and that is, do they like a glossy paper or do they like a matte paper? Okay. And so I talk about the surface reflectance of it, because that would be the first tier of making a choice as to which direction we're going to go with the paper. And then I would talk about texture, and you know, how heavy do you want to go on the texture? You know, we have several papers, and they're all, as I mentioned, they all have a different palette. Yeah. But part of that palette, like you said, is the texture part, and there are a lot of choices. So I think it's worth interpreting the image and figuring out the direction of the texture next. And then within that texture, then there are a whole lot of other choices. And those other choices would be based on, obviously, always the content of the image, but where do you want to end up with the white point of the paper? Because that is important. Specifically, like we talked about earlier, wedding dresses. If somebody is looking for a pure white wedding dress, well then those choices would be driven to a paper that has a really pure white point, because that's going to reflect in the final print. So going through those tiers of rough choices and then really going deeper into what are the little nuances of these papers that will make the print sing. And that part is truly the interpretive part that the artist or photographer is going to ultimately sway that direction based on those choices.
So just segment it down and start cutting your, do I want something with a gloss or not? Do I like a texture or not? And then it's just this constant cutting of the stack until you get down to your handful of options, essentially. So that really, I think that'll be very helpful for people, because it can be overwhelming. It's just like, sometimes looking at our website, we have so many things on there and so many options that when we see people in person at shows, they're like, I don't even know where to start. So just like, tell me where to start. I'm like, okay, well, I would do this, this, and this. Okay, great. Begin. Put a step forward and just try it first. It's not written in stone. You can always change. There are no portrait emergencies.
Exactly. Well, and people ask, it's such a general question that people ask is, what paper should I print on? Well, that's a burning question for everybody.
That's a big question.
But I think it's about the freedom of being able to actually navigate those choices. And I think that people start to think creatively when they see the choices. And that's the key, is to see it through to a final piece that is a creative endeavor. So those choices really help pinpoint that work that you ultimately want. And it's nice to have those choices.
Yeah, for sure. Wonderful. Okay, so Hahnemühle is synonymous with quality, archivability, 400 and how many years?
442 years.
442 years.
And the same paper mill, same place, same aquifer, same water.
Wow.
All in the same place. Amazing. Obviously bigger now, but the original mill is still there.
So you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So when somebody thinks of that, archival, that's a huge word, and something that is going to last for generations, and being able to be displayed and not change color and not lose its tone and like all those things. There's so much technical wording that can go into that. But if you boil that down and you run it through the funnel, what does that actually mean in measurable terms, like days, months, years, and like how do you recommend caring to extend the life of the papers for as long as possible?
Well, the papers are, all our papers are in the digital fine art line, are acid-free and lignin-free. And what that means is the lignin component is gone from there, where there would be yellowing that doesn't exist with our paper. They're truly archival. They're the purest materials. The process is the purest, as I mentioned, the aquifer. And I was mentioning before that there's actually a brewery down the river, or not the river, but the aquifer, that where they draw the same high quality water and make beer out of it. So they're drinking the water that comes downstream from us. I haven't. I've been to the mill. I have not drank their beer, but I would. So, but yeah, they, in terms of quality and longevity, again, 442 years. We have experience in doing real world testing that goes back that far. So we pride ourselves in our reputation and the paper making process, which has endured for 442 years. So it's important for people, I think, to understand that there is a factor of longevity that's important to their work, obviously, because they're putting a lot into the creation of an image, and that image should last. So we're choosing the right materials. Some of the materials are 100% cotton. Some of the materials are alpha cellulose, which is a tree-based wood pulp. But keeping in mind that this is alpha cellulose, it is the finest most integrity part of the wood pulp. It doesn't yellow. It lasts almost as long as cotton does. I mean, cotton is the benchmark.
Yeah.
But all our materials are made with absolute integrity, and they're designed to last.
Awesome. So arguably two of the best processes to create paper that there are.
Obviously.
The top two ways of creating paper that there are, the cotton rag and the alpha cellulose.
Yeah, there are other options. There are sustainable options that we offer that are renewable resources, such as hemp papers and bamboo papers, various ones that are natural lines. So there are several different processes within the paper making, but the key is the effort to make sure that it's acid-free and lignin-free, and that those are the high standards that will define the longevity of the prints. Awesome. So those are the two primary, but there are others. It's just a question of making sure that it's done with the integrity that's necessary for it to last.
For sure. And for those of you that are watching along, if you rewind about 3 minutes or 4 minutes and you listen to Bruce's words, those are the words that you need when you are selling this product. You know, the cotton rag, the acid-free, the lignin-free, the archivability, the aquifer that's made on, like, all those things add a tremendous amount of value, not only to like Hahnemühle's marketing, but to what you're able to talk to your client, your end user client about of that specific product. That exact thing is going to be hanging in their house, and this is the list of qualifications that it has, and this is why it's worth this amount of money. Like, that is very, very important to have to be able to establish that value.
Absolutely.
You know?
And portrait artists in particular, they're creating heirloom pieces. And so the materials that you use and our materials speak to that. They speak to the heirloom image that's intended to be around for generations. Correct. So the choice of materials will make a huge difference in that.
For sure. So being a person who obviously is super familiar with the product, which paper do you think personally, being Bruce, kind of think does it fly under the radar? Like, what's out there in your bag of tricks that you're like, this is awesome, but maybe it hasn't hit that mainstream yet, or that big following yet?
Well, I think the photo rag metallic, it's a very popular paper, but I think it flies under the radar in the sense that you really have to see it and experience it to understand what the magic is. And it's a very unique paper. It's 100% cotton. It's an archival material. It has a beautiful pearlescence, and it's just spectacular. And what I've noticed in my own personal experience working with it is that some images just really come to life, and it's hard to predict. I mean, I've been printing for a long time, and I can usually size up an image and look at it and say, yeah, this is going to look good, or it's going to look fine. But every now and then there's just one that is spectacular.
Now, speaking of an image that looks spectacular on the metallic, this is an image that a good friend of ours and client Rod Evans photographed, and this is printed on your metallic paper in a frame format with the thick 1/8 inch mat around it, and this image is absolutely stunning on the metallic. We've had this at a couple of our trade shows this year, and people just can't get over the detail, and it almost looks three-dimensional. It's beautiful. So you have the words for describing the finish of this. Can you share that, Bruce?
Yeah, the finish, I always tell people to look at the base of the paper, and what I call is a champagne tone to it. It's a warmer white, but it has this luminance that other prints don't have. So to me, it speaks of champagne.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And then the pearlescence of the coating is spectacular, and that's what I was mentioning. Sometimes it's just magic, depending on the textures and just image dependent. But every once in a while, it just speaks to you, and I think that this image does that, and I think that that's what you're your customers are responding to, is when they see it for real.
Right.
They're wowed by it for sure.
Absolutely. And this, like I said, this is surrounded by our 1/8" thick white mat, and then this is our Brimfield Cottage 7/8" wide molding. At WPPI, we did have the same image on display, but it was in a float frame. So we had it in a float, which was our satin metal brass frame, and it looked absolutely stunning. So if you have not played with the metallic paper yet, I highly recommend it. It's my favorite. It's fun to hear that you think that this one kind of flies under the radar too, because I think it's just stunning. So I'll set this one back down here now for a second. So just a couple more questions for you. I know I've been grilling you here a lot. So I think there's people that misunderstand the value, quality, insert whatever word you want here, about what an investment in a paper like Hahnemühle makes is really worth. So somebody that would say to you like, paper's paper. I don't understand what the value is there. What would be your response back to that?
Well, the first thing, and fortunately I work for a company that has just a tremendous reputation, so it is somewhat of a household name. So, obviously amongst imagery producers and photographers, artists, our name goes pretty far and it speaks very clearly, but obviously, representing that to customers is kind of a different story. But I think that a lot of it is tied with our experience in paper making for so long, that's something that should come into the conversation, and that you're making a fine art print, and these are truly fine art materials. And I think that customers will identify with that. It's just a question of educating them on what actually goes into it. And so I feel like, as I mentioned, the choice of paper is just as justified as explaining to your client why you're a good photographer and why you choose the certain lighting and the equipment that you do. This is part of the process, and I think that some photographers are not truly connecting that part of their craft to the very end of the process, and that is a completed print that's framed, matted, and ready to hang on the wall. And that when you compel your customers to use the best cameras, the best photographers, the best process, the best paper, the best frame, that everything comes together beautifully. And so paper is important in that sense.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting that you make that point, because if you are printing on the wrong surface, you're really not cooking the steak at the end. You're leaving it raw. You're not getting to that final point where it's beautiful and it's put together and it's printed on the right thing, and displayed the right way at the right size. So,
and sure. I think photographers truly are excited about fine art printing for that reason, and is that these are surfaces that are not or were not mainstream, that they now have access to, and it is truly a fine art crafted print that people are excited about, because their choices, their surface choices, there's choices of texture, these white points, these are all things that are all readily available within the line of the fine art papers. And I think that people enjoy that.
Yeah, it's super cool. So, like I said, Bruce has been with us all day, and touring around both of the facilities here, meeting the staff, like all the good things. So what has been your favorite product as you've been walking around today, looking at stuff, or your interpretation of a product?
Well, this is one of them.
This is one of them, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what I like is the products that I've seen on display here that you've made are just done so beautifully, and they're not glazed. And I think that that's really awesome, because these surfaces, these textures, these materials are very engaging, in a physical sense, and it's almost a shame to put them behind glass. And so,
boy, write that down. What he just said right there, write that down, because that should be in everybody's repertoire in your sales area.
Yeah.
See, well, I knew you'd say it.
There's situations where it necessitates glazing, an environment that is heavy traffic, maybe you don't have control over who's touching it, who's not touching it. Those are all, I mean, if you look at it like a piece of artwork, it's no different. Right. So it's about the display, and it's a shame to cover it up with glass.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm so glad that we were recording that, because I'm stealing that from you, just so you know. Okay, so for those of you that know and love the fine art papers here at WCC, we're going to run through the Hahnemühle options, and we're also going to give you a little sneak peek on a couple that are going to be coming here shortly. So let's start with, we're going to look at these three here, the portrait ones here on top. So this is going to be our torchon. I'm going to show this to the camera, so Scott can maybe grab that. Now, a good way to compare white points on this are what the paper itself looks like, and these have been printed with a border on them so you can see that on the side, but if it's a full bleed print, you can always flip it over on the back and look at what the texture looks like. Now with the white, it's going to be a little bit hard with lighting, but that's going to be a good way to see your white point and the texture of the paper. And then we go over to our Burita, which is going to have a little bit of an eggshell finish, a little semi-gloss texture to that. So that's our Burita there. And then this is going to be, I think, the table favorite here today, and this is the metallic. And again, if you haven't used the metallic before, you haven't printed on the metallic, it really is absolutely stunning. Anything you want to add on those three, Bruce, before we
No, I think
make
you've
our
described it quite well.
Fun announcement here? Okay, so not this second, but coming very soon, WCC is adding 2 more papers from Hahnemühle. So we're going to give you a little sneak peek on those today. Now granted, with the camera it's going to be a little bit hard to show, but we are adding the photo rag matte Burita. So we're going to have the Burita that has the eggshell finish, and then we're also going to have the matte. And I can't tell you how good this feels.
Velvety.
Oh, it's just wonderful. When it was laying on the desk the other day, I touched it and I was like, oh, that is just, it's really good.
Yes.
So you're going to want to check this out. You had this on display that we printed for you at WPPI. And when I went into the booth, what do you call the little plates alongside the scratch and sniff?
I called them scratch and sniff, but
because
yeah.
I walked up to him like, can I touch it? And one of your girls was like, no, do this one.
Right.
But just to touch it, like, it feels so good. And again, the quality of the paper and the weight of the paper is just, it's wonderful. So this is going to be available through WCC. So this is the Photo Rag Matte Burita. Mm-hmm. And then we're also going to be adding the Photo Rag 308 is what it's called. And this is going to be a little bit heavier. How would you describe the surface in comparison to this, since you're the guy that has all the words here?
This is what I would call, has an eggshell finish. So it's smooth, yet it has a slight, I'm not even going to say texture, it's just, the best way to describe it is an eggshell finish.
Yeah.
It has a little bit of a reticulated surface, just a little
reticulated.
bit.
Well,
Yeah.
you have the words, man. I'm going to tell you, I'm kind of jealous. Yeah, so those 2 will be coming into the offerings for the WCC Fine Art papers very shortly. So you did great. I didn't grill you too bad today.
No, not too bad.
You survived, so that's good.
Yes.
Anything else that we missed that you want to add before we log off here today?
No, I think this is exciting to have gone through your facility. It's just absolutely spectacular. It was great to meet Mike after 2 decades.
Right.
And I've been a loyal customer of WHCC, as we just talked about, for many years. And I think I got you beat on that, right?
You do.
Couple of years.
We'll arm wrestle though and see who wins that one.
No, I had a wonderful tour, spectacular facility, and we're happy to work with you.
Awesome. Ditto. Awesome. And we really appreciate you being with us here today. Again, if you have any questions, make sure and put them into the comments, and we'll make sure and get those answered. I'm sure that we can find Bruce, and he'd be happy to answer any questions you had. If you have not played with the fine art papers, do that. It really is incredible how your work transforms when you print it on the right surface, just like we've really emphasized today. And we appreciate your opinions. I'm going to steal some of your words and use them a lot in the future. All right.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again soon.